What's going on, Giants fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, I want to recap the preseason finale between the Giants and the Jets that took place at MetLife Stadium tonight. And folks, quick little heads up, FYI, I am at my parents' house in Florida, and the background's a little dark out right now. So apologies for any potential lighting issues, but going to do the best we can with this while I'm still on vacation here. But folks, Giants fall to the Jets 32-24. You know, it always stinks to lose to the Jets, but it's only preseason. We saw Aaron Rodgers make his debut as a Jet. He played 2 possessions. The second possession, they scored a touchdown. The first drive, the Giants defense held their own. The Jets played more of their starters than the Giants did tonight. The Giants played very few starters on offense. I believe they played close to none on defense. So goes to show you why the Jets led 14-0 early in this game in the first quarter. The Giants would come back around, though, and outscore the Jets 13-0 in the second quarter. The game started with Tyrod Taylor at quarterback for the Giants, just 2 for 4 for 5 yards. He did not look good at all. Once again, limited sample size behind some awful pass protection. So, you know, I'm not shocked that Tyrod Taylor is struggling in preseason. Again, it's a small sample size, but you know, the Jets had 5 sacks tonight. The Giants had just 1. Tells you all you need to know as far as the offensive line goes. Both teams had shaky offensive lines, but the Giants in particular. And I'm interested to see what happens at the quarterback 2 position. I don't think there's much of a discussion to be had, but Tommy DeVito has played well enough this preseason that you at least have to acknowledge this and ask the question. By no means do I think Tommy DeVito makes it over Tyrod Taylor, because Tyrod Taylor is under contract for 1 more season. But, I mean, the question just has to be asked, right? With the way Tommy DeVito has played this preseason, should he be the quarterback number 2 this year? My answer to this question is no, but in a year or 2 from now, if he's still around, if he makes the practice squad, or if the Giants elect to keep 3 quarterbacks, which is highly unlikely, I think DeVito could turn into a developmental backup QB. DeVito looked really good against the Jets, 19-29, 210 passing yards, 1 touchdown. He did have the pick 6 to Brandon Echols, 67-yard pick 6 return off a pass in the flat to David Sills. Now, Sills should have came to the ball a little bit more, but DeVito definitely underthrew the pass, and it was not a good read at all. But to be fair, DeVito was running for his life more often than not tonight due to the porous blocking from players like Matt Pert, Julian Davenport, and among others. Again, they're so irrelevant of players, I can't even remember half their names, but pretty much Matt Pert, Julian Davenport, Wyatt Davis before he got hurt did not look good. It was definitely a struggle out there tonight for Big Blues offensive line. Once again, Corey Cunningham's the other name I couldn't think of. But DeVito did wind up rushing for 6 rushes for 33 yards. I think he did well enough to deserve a spot on a team, whether it be a practice squad or a 53-man roster. I think practice squad is likely for Tommy DeVito in his rookie season. Again, undrafted rookie free agent out of Illinois. Spent 5 years at Syracuse, finished his college career with Brett Bielema as his head coach, former Giants outside linebackers coach in 2020. So I don't think DeVito's QB2, but I think the discussion needs to at least be had among the coaching staff where they see Tommy DeVito lying this season for them. So I don't think QB2 is out of the option, but I do think it is far-fetched. I would like to see what will happen in this category as well. Is James Robinson the odd man out? We all know before Saquon signed his 1-year contract, basically a fluffed up version of the franchise tag, James Robinson was signed. Now tonight, he looked okay. He had 10 rushes for 55 yards. Now, on the surface, that looks great, 5.5 yards per carry. But he had 28 of those yards on one attempt. So if you eliminate that, it's really it's really 9 carries for 27 yards. So he's averaging just about 3 yards per rush against the second and third team Jets defense. So not too great if you really dig into it. That's why numbers are deceiving sometimes. I don't think James Robinson makes this roster. I think if the Giants do elect to keep 4 running backs, it will be Jashawn Corbin. I think Brightwell will get waived. He's been hurt. He missed the preseason game tonight. So I think the Giants might just roll with 3 running backs on the 53-man and potentially add a 4th elsewhere unless they do elevate Jashawn Corbin to the 53-man. Speaking of Jashawn Corbin, he did have a 1-yard touchdown run tonight. Nice block by David Sills on that play. Eric Gray had 7 rushes for 11 yards. I thought Eric Gray was solid in the receiving game. Gray had 4 catches for 48 receiving yards. He also scored that 2-point conversion in the final minute of the game. My next question is, did David Sills V do enough to make this 53-man roster? David Sills, one of the longest tenured Giants. He's been here since 2019. Ironically, came over from Buffalo, of course, long before Dable and Shane were here. Sills had 6 catches for 81 yards and a touchdown. He was good blocking in the run game, especially on the touchdown run by Corbin, and then he scored that touchdown late in the final minute of the game from DeVito. Nice 30-yard touchdown catch, keeping the feet in tiptoe. But Sills, again, he had that one miscue tonight. He's been really good on special teams. If Bryce Ford-Wheaton didn't get hurt, they probably would have split more reps. But Sills capitalized. Sills continues to be the receiving MVP of the preseason for the last few years now. He's been phenomenal. So I'm intrigued to see now if Sills could make this roster. But if you're doing the math, right, at receiver, the Giants have Campbell, Hodgins, Slayton, and Hyatt as 4 locks, followed probably by Sterling Shepard. And I'd throw Cole Beasley in there as number 6. As long as his injury isn't anything serious, I think they're just resting him for the regular season. Wan'Dale, if he gets activated from PUP, that's 7 right there. And then if you keep Sills or Ford-Wheaton, it would be 8. I don't think the Giants carry 8 receivers on the 53-man roster. So if Sills were to make it, it would have to be at wide receiver 7, and it would be primarily a special teams role. Other guys that impressed tonight, Lawrence Cager, 3 catches for 24 yards. He probably has tight end 3 on lockdown. Very unfortunate that Tommy Sweeney, who had a touchdown earlier this preseason, dealt with a medical event at Wednesday's practice. He was at the stadium tonight. There's a video of him walking in, which was awesome to see. I don't know what will happen with the tight end room, but there's a lot of good tight ends on this roster. Of course, you have Waller and Bellinger, who are the 2 shoe-ins. And then you have Cager, Myrick, and Sweeney vying for 1 or 2 spots. And realistically speaking, I don't know what's going to happen because last year the Giants only kept 2 tight ends on the initial 53. They kept Chris Myrick as a fullback. They kept Belly and Tanner Hudson. So I think the Giants only keep 3 on the initial 53-man roster, but they do need a second blocking tight end outside of Bellinger. Waller is more of a receiver, and Cager is a lesser version of Waller. So I wouldn't be shocked if Chris Myrick makes the roster despite suffering a hand injury tonight. The offensive line was atrocious once again. I think Matt Pert, a lot of people are talking about him definitely making this roster. I'm not buying it. He gave up at least 2 sacks tonight, several pressures, had 1 false start. He was awful. Yes, he had a couple good blocks in the run game. Any offensive lineman can do that, though, moving downfield at the NFL level. Shane Lemieux was okay. He had his moments. He was probably the best of the worst tonight. Giants had a lot of injuries on that offensive line. Wyatt Davis left with an unfortunate ankle injury. Jack Anderson did not play. A guy who was also on the roster bubble, who had some reps last year, had 1 start, 2 on Thanksgiving. So I'm not so sure what's going to happen. after the top 6 with the starting 5 and then Josh Azudu. So we'll see if Tyre Phillips and Shane Lemieux round out the roster. Marcus McKeithen is another name to keep an eye on. They did keep 9 last year on the initial 53-man. I anticipate them keeping 9 again this year, but we'll see what happens. Defensively, Isaiah Simmons, we saw his Giants debut, limited sample size, wore number 46. He had a nice pressure on Aaron Rodgers. I thought he was solid. They interviewed him post-game. Seems very happy to be here with Big Blue. It was rumored he no longer wanted to play linebacker with the Arizona Cardinals, but I think Wink's scheme allows him to play so many different positions. He has a little bit more freedom to roam around the football field, and he got a nice pressure on Aaron Rodgers on one snap. So that was great to see. We'll see how he fits in for a guy who barely knows the playbook at this stage of the game. Carter Coughlin definitely solidified a roster spot. 2 tackles for loss, continues to be an ace on special teams, does everything right, in my opinion. Ray Wilborn had the only sack of the night, had 3 tackles. I did not see Cam Brown out there. I don't know if that was injury-related or if they were resting him. Cam Brown is obviously on the roster bubble as well, despite being a special teams captain last season. I thought Tamon Fox looked good again. I think he's edge number 4. Again, not saying much with the lack of edge room depth, but he's definitely above guys like Deshaun Bauer, Habakkuk Baldonado, and O'Shane Ximines, who I do think ultimately gets released come cutdown day. The other guy I want to talk about defensively is Alex Cook, undrafted safety out of Washington, had 7 tackles. I think he'll ultimately wind up on the practice squad, but there was a point in the game against the Jets tonight where Alex Cook was one of 3 healthy DBs that were able to play. As far, of course, the starters were getting rested. Trey Hawkins, Adoree Jackson, and Deonte Banks were all sitting tonight. Nick McLeod dealing with an injury issue. Aaron Robinson, of course, still on PUP. Darnay Holmes was healthy, but he barely played. So who the heck knows what's going on, especially after we saw Bobby McCain suffered a concussion. Very unfortunate. Injuries really piled up tonight for Big Blue, by the way. Zion Gilbert had a hamstring, didn't return. Javarius Owens had a hamstring as well, did not return. Jamon Green had a shoulder, did not return. So that's 4 DBs that went down tonight, in addition to what Big Blue was already dealing with. So in total, the Giants had 8 injuries tonight. Not good. So I mentioned McCain, Myrick with the hands, Gilbert, Ford Wheaton with the knee, Wyatt Davis, Javarius Owens, Jamon Green, and Khalil Pimpleton, who did return. He did have a finger injury, so he seems to be okay. Special teams, Graham Gano was Graham Gano. 3 field goals on the night on 3 attempts, 2 field goals of 55 or more yards, hit a 57-yarder and a 56-yarder. Graham Gano, Mr. Automatic, gets better with age. You love to see that. I thought Jamie Gillen punted the ball a little bit better against the Jets, averaged around 49 yards per punt, which was great to see. And ultimately speaking here, I think the last thing I want to talk about is some surprise cut predictions before I put out my 53-man roster prediction with Sam. 3 veterans I think are on the outs are these 3: Matt Pert, O'Shane Ximines, and Darnay Holmes. Ever since Wink Martindale came into this system, Darnay Holmes has not fit. He is not a press man corner. He is more of a zone coverage corner. He fit much better with Patrick Graham with the Las Vegas Raiders. Granted, he can account for 2.74, 2.75 in savings against the cap if the Giants are to release him. So I think it'll be interesting to see if Darnay Holmes is ultimately released come cutdown day. I think he should be. If not, give him a pay cut like they did with Darius Slayton last season. They minimized his salary, and Slayton balled out when he had opportunities. O'Shane Ximines has not been able to set an edge for the first 4 years of his career. Again, going up against second, third teamers, playing late in preseason games. He just doesn't cut it for me at this point. He's been leapfrogged by Tamon Fox. I would just let him go completely. Nice guy, but not cutting it for this 53-man roster. And I think his days in Big Blue are numbered. Matt Pert, this is a guy who I actually think might be safe only because of the injuries that the Giants have suffered at the offensive line position and the fact that they have lack of tackle depth. But let's be realistic here. The Giants could claim a swing tackle off of waivers, right? There are some guys out there Big Blue can look into. Again, you look at the Giants' top reserves, Tyre Phillips, flexibility, can play guard or tackle. Marcus McKeithen can play guard or tackle. Shane Lemieux can play guard or center. Jack Anderson, guard or center. Josh Azudu can play either guard spot. I can't say the same for Matt Pert. He's either playing left tackle or right tackle. He is purely a swing tackle. He has less flexibility than guys like McKeithen and Lemieux and Phillips, who I all think are ahead of Matt Pert on this 53-man roster, in my personal opinion. I think he's just playing more than some of these other guys, or earlier in preseason games than some of these other guys, due to lack of depth at the position. If he does make the initial 53, don't be surprised if the Giants make a waiver claim and try to upgrade from him, ultimately leading to his release. But folks, that's all I've got for this video. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you like what you watch, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Twitter account, and Instagram at Big Blue Avenue. We appreciate all of your support. And speaking of support, quick shout out to our sponsor, BetUS. You can sign up with our promo code below there at Join125. Get a 125% sign-up bonus where you can bet on the go, anywhere, anytime. That's BetUS, America's #1 favorite sports book, where the game begins. And folks, it's on to my only 53-man roster prediction for the 2023 Big Blue team. Really excited to reveal that to you folks sometime within the next 24 to 48 hours. Appreciate all of your support. Without further ado, let's go Big Blue.